Hello, my friends. I'm so excited to be here with Mary Vandenack. She is a great friend of mine. She's also the founder and managing partner of Vandenack Weaver. I'm going to go into a little bit more about what she does, but I just first want to say welcome, Mary, and thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks, Sandy. You know that chatting with you is always one of my favorite things.
I know it's been a couple years, and you've been very busy. So I'm going to read this. Mary Vandenack, while a lawyer by profession, has studied extensively in mind-body areas of fitness and wellness. She is a Yoga Alliance RYT 200. I'm not quite sure exactly what that means. Maybe you can fill us in. Power Pilates certified and ACE certified, and has earned a specialization in Foundation of Positive Psychology from University of Pennsylvania, Master Track certificate in social work from University of Michigan. And like I said, this has all kind of been happening over the last few years. I mean, a lot of this before that, but wow, it's great to see you, and tell us a little bit more about what I just said, like how I introduced you, please.
Yes. So I'm a lot, and I forgot to add one in there. So I've been also doing some more mindfulness training. So I'll get that one to you. But, you know, a lot of people were power watching Netflix during the pandemic, and I'd be the person who was power taking classes. And I've had the long time interest in well-being and have often shared that through my love and passion for teaching yoga and mindfulness and fitness classes in general. But both like personally and professionally, we've moved to different places and we've been through this pandemic.
Yeah.
But we've added, you know, at our law practice, a care management service. And in the estate planning area, which has always been a very personal area to work in, but you can really see the impacts of life challenges in a different way. And we've added, my own aunt and uncle are currently both in hospice as we speak to this morning.
Yeah.
And so having some more of it's always been one of my passions. You know, my uncle's a psychiatrist, my mother's a PhD counselor of some sort. So I've always been passionate about the whole wellness. I've heard it since I was a child, and decided I've been asked more and more to talk about it and be involved in it. So I thought the academic credentials to go with that would be helpful. And I chose the positive psychology because I think, you know, just the concept of positivity and Marty Seligman are amazing. I did the social work, and actually I'm planning on finishing my master's in that because I'm really interested in this ACEs, which is the adverse childhood events and the trauma treatments that's become really common to look at today. And there's a lot of evidence-based information out there that tells us how it impacts us.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, you and I have known each other for a long time, and, you know, watching you, especially over the last few years, with what's going on in the world, you know, just really forging ahead and above and beyond the law practice, bringing these mindfulness pieces, these positive, you know, how we think really impacts who we are and what we do, and how that impacts everybody around us. I just, you know, it's just like, yeah, let's do this. This is a time to do this. And our conversation today, we want to have a conversation about kindness, because there's a lot of different pieces of kindness, whether it's to others or to ourselves. So with that being said, most of you know Mary. She does write a column for Metro Magazine. Our column that appeared last October was about kindness, but let's talk about kindness as a character strength. So
and one of the things in the positive psychology work that I've did is there's a via character strengths, and kindness is among those strengths, right? And what is kindness? It's a true and genuine compassion in terms of the way you act, not just towards others, but yourself. And I'm just going to point out that I was noticing behind you, selenite, roses. There's a cup there with joy. I'm not sure what's in there. I was wondering if that was.
This is amethyst that's in my cup.
Yeah, that's what I thought I was seeing there. And so just surrounding yourself with some things that are what I would say very positive, beautiful. When you turn around, hopefully that gives you a sense of that is a great exercise in self-compassion. And so that's one of the things. And I was speaking with, I have a podcast, Legal Visionaries. I was speaking, we do a well-being segment, and I had the joy of talking to Ina Hazan, who is a mindfulness professor at the Harvard's medical school. And she was, I thought I knew a little bit about mindfulness until I spoke with her. And it was a really great education, but she speaks a lot about that importance of self-compassion in terms of kindness. And one of the ways she was talking about it when we were talking about the mindfulness practice was that, and I was sharing my own experience about, well, I've started this mindfulness practice, and sometimes I have trouble with that piece about acceptance, like I'm supposed to accept what's going on in my life. And she was, well, no, it's not that. It's just accepting that you're feeling sad that you just had this happen. That's not that you're accepting what happened yet. So that self-compassion is important. We're also in a time where, the whole world, all of us, every one of us has been through so much the last few years. We've had political unrest. We've had a pandemic. We've had our life changed in many ways. We're watching a Russian-Ukraine conflict right now and the mixed views about that. And in the meantime, we've had marriages get canceled because you couldn't have a wedding ceremony. We've had people die by themselves with nobody at their side because of the hospital situation. We've all been through unique experiences. It's just a moment in history where the practice of kindness, both towards others and towards ourselves, is really merited.
Yeah. And I want to say one thing as you're talking. I think something that's, I mean, it's been this way for a little while, but really is unique to other, maybe look at historical events, is that everybody knows what everybody's feeling and doing. And I think a lot of, too, we're also picking up on what other people's suffering is and, extending our energetic kindness to them. But it's not just us. It's like everybody in the world, because we're seeing all this happening where, at some point in history that you weren't getting that minute by minute information. So maybe to that point, being kind to not always be into that, watching that information. I mean, it's a kindness sometimes to not be so involved in everything else. I don't know why I wanted to say that. I just did.
I think that's a conversation topic that's actually come up fairly frequently, is that you're inundated with information. And absolutely, and I always say there's a kindness runs two ways with, say, devices and all the information out there, right? For me, having a device has made it possible to get away from the office. And so that I look at it as that's the kindness of the phone. But then if I'm spending all my time reading the things that people post, and one of the conversations we had recently in reference to kindness is just that, one, some of what we see where it's really easy to post an unpleasant thing about somebody on Facebook that you would probably never say to their face. It's also tons of information and you're reading that. And even if you read somebody's comment and go, that was really unkind, you've still experienced that unkindness. So absolutely turning that off is an act of self-compassion. And I have a great example in that I have a friend who wasn't working during the pandemic, and he recently started a new job. And I've been watching him go from being really sad to being like an all new guy, right? Every time I see him, he's pleasant, he's happy, and so we were talking about that this week. And he said, I think that, while I wasn't working during the pandemic, it was just too easy to turn on the news. Mm-hmm. And he goes, I would flip back and forth between Fox and CNN and listen to both sides, and it made me feel ucky. So I think that's a great point, Andy, that self-kindness is sometimes turn off the news. Like, I actually don't watch it. I will read my news, and only from sources that I consider objective. And if I'm on social media and people are posting on politics, I scroll by.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the inundation that it's everywhere. And it's all, and a lot of it is subjective too. But that's maybe another conversation. But let's just talk briefly kindness versus compassion. And Talk about that.
So, and that's, I kind of have to say, I've stolen that from Ina. And so what is kindness? And kindness is acting with compassion, right? As opposed to there being exactly the same thing. And so again, that really goes back to the example that I gave you, that I see right there in your room, that I love.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, say, kindness as a character strength, and acting, taking that, you have that as a strength, and then you act with compassion. It can be both one of the things I like to mention about those, the things that you have as strengths, is that they can also become, you can over exercise a strength or under exercise a strength. And one of the ways you can see that is, okay, so we have this kindness and we're going to use that kindness, act with compassion towards others. Right now, I will say in my own world, there's been a lot of people who have really hit rock bottom. And I can tell you, just in the last few weeks, I've dealt with several situations, and it becomes draining. So the thing is, you have to say is, how can I reach out, provide some support without, being so kind and exercising so much compassion that I have nothing left, which then fails your self-compassion. So it's finding it's great to be a kind person, and the world can use more kindness, but continue to exercise it both externally and towards yourself so that you're not losing it. And I had just a situation here this week where one of the things I love about, there's kindness and there's invasiveness, right? Some people will take kindness and I call it fake kindness, and cross lines and set it up and use it a way to be invasive to you. On the other hand, I use actually my partner, who's a great example, who said to me, Mary, you've been through a really, really tough year, and this situation is requiring a lot of energy. And I know you want to help this person. Are you the person to do it today? And I was like, oh,
What a great question. What a great
right?
question.
As
Wow.
opposed to saying what I would call invasive would be, Mary, blah, 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 you're on edge because you've been through something, blah, 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 or something like, and I had that happen with this woman who really hadn't been around me, and who at one point called me up and threw my brother's suicide in my face, among other things. It's like, okay, there's nothing kind about that. But my
Yeah.
partner, who can just give me this reflective feedback.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important for us not only to look at our kindness and acting with, but having real, true, and genuine kindness in our lives.
Right.
Because I know that my partner is one of my go-to people in those moments, because he can reflect, he will think, I don't think he's ever said anything unkind to me, and he will never tell me what he thinks I should do or set me up to, then hit me, which some people do with what I call fake kindness. He will simply do exactly what he did the other day, which was say, well, and that's like a true. And I think so it's important to look at, do we have people in our lives that we can have a conversation with when we're having those moments, that are going to treat us with true kindness as well?
Absolutely. And I think, again, the whole question that he asked you, asking somebody a question versus making a conclusion on what they need or don't need, or should be doing or shouldn't be doing. That was just, that was an awesome question. And I want to say one thing too, because I'm looking at the time, but I've made a decision. We're going to go a little bit longer because this is such a great conversation. When you're being kind to somebody, and sometimes people don't want people to be kind to them. They have almost a resistance to it. Have you ever noticed that when you're trying, when you're gifting kindness to them, they're not necessarily receiving it?
And yeah, and it's interesting, because even in preparing for this, I was pulling up some of the things I've recently studied on the issue of kindness, and that difficulty in accepting, and it can come from a variety of things,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like being unable to accept a compliment. A truly kind person with self-compassion, and I think I've certainly had periods in my life where if you compliment, I'm like in a duck, like, really? The same thing about accepting kindness. So why is that? Sometimes it's it's just I feel really bad about myself, and so it's really
Yeah.
hard to accept kindness. That can be one. It can also be a boundary. But I think no matter whether somebody's accepting it or not, you have to be aware and
Yeah.
continue to be kind, but you also have to recognize that's a boundary, they're not ready for it,
Yeah.
and don't shove into there. You know, we see some people, and I have one of my favorite examples is this gal that I know who is kind of, and I just call it the epitome of fake kindness, who will look at somebody like that who, you know, maybe they're just not ready for it. Maybe
Yeah.
I know that I went through a terrible experience a year ago, and I have a great friend who called me and texted me every single day for like 3 months saying, you will get on a plane and you're going to come out here and you're going to let me give you some love and kindness. And I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
And then one day I like accepted her invitation and I got on a plane and I flew out there and I let her give me love and kindness. So that person who's kind of ducking the kindness isn't ready. And so it's a back off for the moment, but notice that and kind of be looking for the opportunity when they might be ready.
Yeah, because it's not, there's not a right or wrong about that, but yeah, some people just aren't ready and then don't take it personally because they're just not ready. So again, you see awareness, which is really a key piece too, is kind of just being aware of what's happening in their world, even if you don't know everything that's happening in their world.
And we usually don't. And
Yeah.
one of the things, you know, in with what I do for a living, and it's really interesting because I always think because I do this and I see this and I see what people go through with loss, then when I go through it, it should be easier, but it's not. But one of the things that I always talk about is when somebody goes through a major loss, like a death in their family or a really intense, serious event. But death in the family is a good example because then everybody's calling you, sending flowers, memorials, stopping to see you, showing up at the visitation and funeral. Then that's all gone. And
Yeah.
3 to 4 weeks later, you're left to deal with that. And
Right.
so that's the time to just kind of check in. And I say, I know I have a friend recently who went through a really big loss. And I've checked in and checked in. Same thing as what I went through last year. And she's like, can I take you to dinner? Can I, you know, and it's been no, 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 no. And then this week she finally accepted. So it's
Yeah.
like, it's and not being annoying. So I didn't call, and my friend didn't annoy me when she called and texted me every
Right.
day.
Right.
But I was actually, I just wasn't ready, right? But
Yeah.
just being there in the way that you know works in a particular relationship
Yeah.
without getting overly carried away.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, so I'm looking, I've got, our notes in front of us. So I want to kind of move through these. And if you're looking at these as well, where would you like to go? Because we've got a few more minutes, and I want to kind of see what do you feel like is the best entry point for the conversation.
Well, I think there's 2 other things that
Okay.
I would just like to talk about from this list because some of it I haven't gone quite in order as is usual, correct?
Well,
But
that's okay. Yeah.
I just want to make one follow-up point on that surrounding yourself with kindness. And then what I'd like to finish with is just talking about the made of kindness meditation, because that's something I think that's, I've written about that several times over the years. And I like to remind myself and others about what that means because it encompasses all of the elements of kindness. But so that, the point that I was talking about is surrounding yourself with kindness, but true and authentic kindness. And one of the things is because there's a type of kindness that is considered what we call the setup, the fake, inauthentic kindness where somebody's setting you up. And one of the places we see that is in domestic violence type
Yeah.
situations. It's I love you, I love you, I love you. I hit you because I love you. I said this to you because I loved you. I had this difficult conversation with you because I care. No, that was invasive. No, you hit me because you have an issue. You invaded my life in a way that was inappropriate. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes when we've all been through this life period, we can really be vulnerable and susceptible to what I call inauthentic kindness. And we can end up getting set up for, being gaslighted or for a domestic violence situation or a friend or a work situation. We see that type of thing a lot in the workplace. You know, it could be mansplaining, womansplaining, whatever type of thing in the workplace where somebody reaches out to you like, I really like your work, and then they steal your idea, right? And so you just have to kind
Right.
of look. And a couple of I've just been really interested in how you identify that when you're being set up, so to speak, because it's really tough. And I know personally, I went through a situation like that, and I'm going, wow, I thought I was more enlightened than that. And one of
Yeah.
my favorites, though, is if you really listen to somebody, and let's say, you know, I know a gal who will be telling the story about how she went out of her way to be kind to person X, and then person X turned on her. And then next is person Y. And so you have to kind of listen to that, because that's the thing is, like, you know, a lot of us will be, well, I'm the different friend that she really cares about. And if they're saying that about, you know, on a regular basis, then it's really, that's who they are, and you need to hear that, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's one of the things to watch for in terms of, you know, is it a person who just is what I call an attention seeker? In conversation, how often are they actually asking about you?
Right.
And then when they ask about you, do they listen to what you had to say? And is the response coming from a place that acknowledges what you said versus telling you what they want to tell you? And those are the kind of the subtle differences that can be really tough to identify.
Yeah. But I think you said it, you know, very well, is that we need to be the listener, and we need, you know, we need to be aware, and we need to listen to what people are telling us, and then make our decision on, okay, this feels light for me, this, or this does not, this is something that, um, you know, that feels heavy. So, yeah. All right. Well, any last words, Mary? Is there one other thing you do want to talk about, the meta kindness meditation? So let's talk about that.
So I just wanted to share that. So that's
Yeah.
the meditation that we suggest. And again, meditation doesn't have to be seated on a floor, on a mat. So people think, oh, but the thing that Ina talks about with this meditation is just making it a mindfulness meditation, which is being just really, really aware. And so it again starts with that self-compassion. We get up this morning. What step can I take to make this day okay for me, even if what I'm going to go do today is visit my aunt and uncle who I know are not going to be with me very long, right? So that's a hard thing to do. Is there something that I can do, which is, you know, I just love selenite. So it might be as simple as
Yeah.
picking up that piece of selenite and holding that and taking some deep breaths. Or it can be, you know, buying yourself something that you really like, or just having a special cup of coffee, which is one of my
Yep. I
things.
was actually going to say that. Yes. Like a special latte or whatever it may be, that just,
So
you know, yeah.
fortunately, I have a guy that works here now who knows that I have this love for different coffees. So every day I get this little email, and
Yeah.
he made a pot for when we're done. He goes, I tried this new coffee so that's great. So that's the self. And then it's like, then you next think about, take that same meditation and express love and kind thoughts towards people in your life that you know. And that's still pretty easy a lot of times. Actually, a lot of times that's easier than self-compassion. Yes, and the cat in there is just
I
perfect
let the
timing.
kitty come in
It's
for
perfect
because, yeah.
timing.
Yeah.
And so that is a lot of times easier. And then the challenging one is to take the thoughts of kindness and compassion and
Yeah.
give them to the general world. So where you use the example of too much information, if you see some of that information and can go to just having thoughts of love and kindness towards what you're seeing out in the
Yeah.
world, then that's how that works.
Yeah. Wow. What a great conversation, Mary. This just, I mean, we could probably talk for another hour about this, but it's so great to see you. I look forward to having you back. Um, Mary, where can people connect with you? I know you have your own website, correct?
I do have my own website, maryvandenack.com, and you can always contact me through that. It's probably the easiest way.
Yeah.
I'm also, people will find me at vwadis.com, and that's another way you can just click and you can get to me. It takes a couple more steps. So yeah, maryvandenack.com, and I'm always happy to chat. Love to hear thoughts on particularly, I love my profession and all the crazy tax issues, but I'm really passionate about the well-being concepts.
Yeah. All right, Mary, thank you again so much. And folks, always be asking as well what else is possible, and we will see you next time.